Thank you. Quorum of 75 being present, the meeting will come to order. We got a little bit more than that tonight. And there's quite a few people still being checked in, but we'll get them in here. As is our tradition, let's please all stand and pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Welcome to our May 5th, 2025 Bolton Annual Town Meeting. I just read something today that the first Bolton Town Meeting was August 14th, 1738. So we've been doing this longer than we've been a country, which is pretty exciting and something we hope to continue for a long, long time. The warrant having been posted as required by bylaws, we will commence our meeting. I'm going to introduce the folks up here, and then I'm going to go through some procedures, and we'll get started. I'm Doug Story, your town moderator. On my right are the two members of our select board, Kate Bayek and Brian Boyle. Next to them, our town administrator, Marie Sobolivero, and Town Council Bob Gibbons. And then on the far right, our Town Clerk, Jennifer Marquis. On my left, we have the Advisory Committee, Chairman Robert Guerrero, William Nichols, Greg Myers, Greg Lauer, Brian Mooney, and Don Cole. I do want to remind everyone, especially those coming in, to take a seat as quickly as you can. And we're going to be pretty full, so you're going to have to find a seat, but there are quite a few out here. Please, everyone, turn off your cell phone. Thank you. Couple of procedures. We do not allow the use of cameras at our town meeting. It's being filmed by Bolton Access TV, and anyone at home can watch that, and you can see that after if you'd like. To run our meeting, we use town meeting time, which is a set of regulations for running town meetings created by the Massachusetts Moderator Association. We vote now with the remote devices. We also occasionally will have a voice vote, and we vote with an aye for yes and a nay for no. With the electronic devices, we have a 1 and a 2 for yes and no. And we're going to do a test vote, so hang on. Why don't we go ahead and do that? Okay, so everyone can take a look at your device, and you'll see on the back a number. That's your number. There's going to be a grid eventually, and you'll see your number, and you'll be able to see that you voted when we do this. Again, green 1 is yes, red 2 is no. You can change your vote until the vote is closed. So whatever the last number you hit is how your vote gets recorded. If you don't want to run the risk of doing that, make your vote and keep your finger away from the button. I will always take time and ask to be sure that if anyone needs any additional time, we're not going to rush anyone from making their vote. And if anyone, when we do this test vote, uses their remote, presses a number, and doesn't see their number highlighted on the screen, raise your hand, and we'll be sure to get you another one. We have 1,000, so we should have enough for tonight. Are we ready to put up the test vote? Okay. I don't know if everyone saw that, but if the number on your remote device is even, vote yes. If it's odd, vote no. And you should see a number in the screen that says that you voted after you push it. Does anyone need any more time to vote? Okay, now this is what I will do on each vote. I will say we're going to close the vote. And when we close it, you can't change your vote. The votes have been recorded. You can see we had 408 votes here. Did anyone have any concern that their vote did not show up? Raise your hand, please. Thank you. If it's blue, the vote was counted. If it's gray, there's no vote. So just understand that everyone doesn't have to vote, and everyone may not vote on every issue. So we don't check off whether or not every number's been counted. All right, we're gonna do this one more time so everybody can check, just in case if they had any concern that their remote. We can scroll to that, yeah. All right, so let's reopen the vote. And let's all go ahead and vote again, okay? So choose one or two. Doesn't really matter. Okay, I'm going to ask again, is there anyone who does not see that their vote has lit up? Well, we don't need 4 pages. But go ahead and scroll through them again so people can look at them. Is there anyone else in the room that is having a problem with seeing their number counted, turning to blue? So we did find a couple. Could be the batteries. We were going to swap them out. I'll just read you a few more of our procedures. We have traditionally used a voice vote in Bolton for many years until we had these remote devices. And it was the moderator's decision to call it whether or not it passed by majority or even 2/3 majority. If the count was too close that the moderator couldn't tell, we would go to an actual hand-counted count with ballots. And I will tell you that the 2 times that we went to a hand count after I declared it passed by 2/3 vote, it wasn't even close. It passed. So we do have that ability, but if people question the moderator, you certainly can question the moderator. We need to have 7 people do that, and then we will, in the case of a voice vote, move to a count. But that's actually what we're doing here. So this is a ballot count here. So we've kind of eliminated that. We're going to have a couple of presentations tonight on the budget, and we limit our presentations to about 5 minutes. We try and keep it fairly short. I'm going to tell you one thing we're going to do a little different tonight is that when we get to the budget, which is Article 4, we're going to move the article and second it. Then we're going to hear 2 presentations, one by advisory and one by the school. Then I'm going to read through the budget, department by department, and I'm going to ask anyone, we're not going to have people come up and talk as I'm reading it. We're going to hold all the questions to the end and take them at one time. So I'm going to ask anyone who wants to either question or comment about a section of the budget to raise your hand, and you can call out hold. Okay, I'm asking you to tell me you want to hold on that item. We're going to note that. We'll continue through the budget. Anyone who wants to speak has the right to do so, and we'll be given that opportunity. We'll go in order of the budget, so it'll be fairly logical. Please don't speak until I recognize you. We do ask you to come up to one of the 2 microphones, and as I said, we're going to go in the order that we go through the budget. When you're recognized, please state your name and address. Address your comments to the moderator. Try and keep it on topic and not personal, of course. I will let people know if we seem to be getting the same comment over and over again. We want to give everyone the opportunity to have anything they have to say that's new and different, but at some point we don't want to just repeat the same thing over and over again. If there's anyone in here who's incapable of getting up to one of the microphones and you want to speak, if you raise your hand and be persistent with it, hopefully I will see you or someone else up here will see you, and we'll get a microphone to you, okay? Again, at the proper time as we're going through the budget. Did we get all the remote devices worked out? We've got them changed over here and one here. All right? With that, if everyone has a counting device in their possession, we're going to begin with Article 1, and I'll also tell you that I read the headline of the article, I don't read the whole article. So Article 1 is to accept the annual reports sponsored by the Select Board and approved unanimously by the Select Board and the advisory. What is your pleasure?
Move the article, Mr. Moderator.
It's been moved and seconded. Okay, we have to do that on any article. On these, I'm going to ask if there's any discussion on the first three before we get to the budget. Usually there isn't. Does anyone have any discussion on the annual reports? Okay, seeing no one, we're going to have our first real vote, all right? So now this is a vote to accept the annual reports. 1 is yes, 2 is no. Please open the vote. Does anyone need any more time to vote on Article 1? Not seeing anyone requesting that, let's close the vote on Article 1. Passes by a simple majority. Article 2, unpaid bills for the previous fiscal year. There are a total of $995.05 in bills from the previous year. There is one change to this. This was sponsored by the Select Board and approved by Select Board and advisory by unanimous. You see that it says vote required 4/5. It's actually come to our attention that this only requires a majority vote if the town had sufficient appropriations for these bills in the prior fiscal year, which we did. So I'm letting you know that all we need is a majority on this article.
Move the article.
Second.
The article's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the unpaid bills from the previous year? Seeing none, let's open the vote, and you can vote now. 1 is a yes in favor of paying the unpaid bills for the previous year. 2 is a no. Does anyone need any more time to vote on Article 2? All right. right, let's close the vote, please. That passes. And as you can see the count. 484 to 18. Article 3, unpaid retroactive wages. To see if the town will vote to transfer from available funds the sum of $5,431.13 for unpaid retroactive wages. What is your pleasure?
Move the article, Mr. Moderator.
Second.
The article's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on unpaid retroactive wages? Not seeing any, let's open the vote. This requires a majority, sponsored by the Select Board. 1 is in favor, 2 is opposed. Does anyone need any more time on Article 3? Yes? Okay, well, we're gonna come see you. Okay. Jenny's gonna see you. At any point in time, if anyone is having a problem, we'll give you a new one. Does anyone need any more time? Yes. Jenny? Is there one more here? No? Okay. All right, let's close the vote, please. This passes. All right, Article 4 is fiscal year 2026 operating budget. To see if the town will vote to raise an appropriate transfer from available funds or otherwise provide the sum of $33,957,499.85. And there are 4 different areas where the money is coming from. I'm not going to read each of those. But I will read the last paragraph. And further, raise and appropriate the additional sum of $1,927,105 for the same purposes, provided, however, that the appropriation for such additional sum shall be contingent upon approval of the voters of a provision, a Proposition 2.5, so-called override question, allowing the town to raise additional funds outside the otherwise applicable levy or do or act relating thereto. So this vote is for the budget and for the override. This was sponsored by the Select Board and approved by both the Select Board and the Advisory.
Move the article, Mr. Moderator.
So the article has been moved and seconded. This requires a majority vote. We're not going to vote for quite a while here. We have two presentations. First is by advisory, the second is by the school district. Then after those presentations, we're going to go to the back of our warrant and we're going to read through the numbers. At that point in time, you're going to raise your hand and say hold if there's an area that you want to hold and come back to when we get to the comment section. I'll tell you that again, but Bob Guerrero.
Great, thanks, Doug. Good evening, everyone. I'm Bob Guerrero. I'm the chair of the advisory committee, and I'm joined tonight by the full advisory committee. So the advisory committee is deeply involved in the preparation of the town's budget every year. Our process starts in December when we review the budget as submitted, and then we meet just about every week from January through April, and we review the budget line by line with each of the department heads. It's a long and very detailed process of reviewing the budget. So I would just like to very quickly thank the group of folks who have worked on this all year. Thanks. So it's certainly the full advisory committee, and there's another set of folks that have been with us every step of the way. It's the select board, our town administrator, Marie Sobelvaro, our town accountant, Nanashka Rogers, and our town executive assistant, Jenny Jacobson, as well as all of the department heads who participate in this as well. So you can think of the advisory committee as an independent set of eyes that reviews the budget every year. We are an independent committee. This group here, we are just town residents who volunteer our time to help support the financial health of the town. We are not town employees. We don't report to the select board. We really just provide an independent set of eyes on the budget, and we make our recommendations to the select board and to the town administrator. If anyone is interested in seeing how this process goes at any point, or if you are curious about any aspects of the budget, all of our meetings are public meetings. We generally meet on Tuesday evenings over Zoom. The meeting agendas are posted on the town website. The Zoom links are posted on the website. You are welcome to join. And if anyone is interested in joining the advisory committee at some point, we tend to have an opening every year or two. Provide your name to our town clerk, and you can get on the list of future advisory committee members. Okay, enough of the introduction, so I'll get into the briefing. If we can get to the first slide. So the proposed fiscal year 26 operating budget is $33,957,500. This is a 9.1% increase over fiscal year 25. Just to remind you, when we're talking about operating budget, this is the expenditures that fund the town's day-to-day expenses. When we add on top of that capital expenditures and a few state and county assessments, that then totals up to the total budgeted expenditures, which for FY26, the proposed amount is $34,392,136. That's an 8.8% increase over fiscal year 25. The group that has collectively put this budget together over the last several months, we feel this is a very solid budget and in the best interests of the town. This budget maintains the town services at their current level. It supports our schools. It provides a secure financial footing for the future, and it preserves the top quality team of town employees that we've put together. But in order to get here and to close this budget, it will require a $1,927,105 budget override. So I'd like to take the next few minutes and talk about the budget in a little bit of detail and explain why we're in the position we're in today. If we can go to the next slide. So This is a graph that shows inflation over the last several years. And as I'm sure everyone here is familiar, inflation in the past had been modest for many, many years. It had been around 2%. In some years, it was even a little bit below 2%, consistently for a fair number of years. Beginning in 2021, inflation nationally spiked dramatically, and it remained high for several consecutive years, and it continues to remain slightly elevated. And you're all familiar with this because I know you experience it at home as well. Next slide. So now next to each of these bars, we have placed the town operating budget. And so you'll notice that the town operating budget spiked significantly in 2023. It has largely remained consistent with inflation until 2023. That difference, that 2-year difference between when we see inflation spike in 2021 and when the town budget increases in fiscal year 23, that is really a function of the way we do budget planning and the way fiscal years align with calendar years. So, for example, our town departments prepare their budgets, started preparing their budgets in November and December of 2024, but those budgets were for fiscal year 26. So we expect that 2-year lag. And this increase in operating budgets is really just a reflection of the fact that virtually everything the town has to pay for costs more now than it did a few years ago, whether that's heating our town buildings or providing IT services to the town or any repairs to vehicles or buildings in the town or electricity costs. Virtually everything that the town has to pay for costs more. And I know you're familiar with this because you experience it at home as well. Next slide, please. So this dashed line is now this represents the Proposition 2.5 levy limit increase. Towns in Massachusetts, by law, are limited in their ability to raise revenue to the increase can be no more than 2.5% above what was raised the prior year. So this situation where costs are rising at a rate that is significantly higher than the town's ability to raise revenue really presents an unsustainable situation. And we're not the only town in Massachusetts that's facing this situation. In fact, many, many small towns in Massachusetts are in the same position where they're trying to deal with expenses that are rising much faster than revenue can be raised. Many towns, as you know, have had overrides in the recent past or are facing an override situation this year. And I think it's fair to say that every small town in Massachusetts that raises most of their revenue through residential taxes, if they haven't had an override yet, they will very soon, because you just can't avoid the math behind this chart that really says when expenses are rising much faster than revenue can be raised, you have a situation that over time is just not sustainable. So this begs the question, though, how have we avoided an override in the last few years? Well, we actually have a number of tools available to us to help us manage the situation for, at least in the short term. We have had, the town's benefited from federal funds in terms of ARPA funds. Over the last few years, we've been able to take advantage of that to fund a number of capital expenses. 2 years ago, we dipped into our stabilization fund when one of the town buildings required a significant roof repair. Last year, we used over $900,000 of our free cash to fund the operating budget. Last year, we also funded our OPEB, our other post-employment benefits, our assessments at 10 to 15% of really what we should have funded them at. So we used all of those tools to avoid an override in the past, but at this point, those tools are exhausted. ARPA funds are gone. Our stabilization fund needs to be replenished. Our free cash is down to the minimum that we are comfortable keeping it at. And not funding OPEB to its full amount consecutive years is not a good situation to be in. So we are left with a potential override situation. Next slide, please. So let's look at the sources of revenue that we have for the town. So by far the largest amount are property taxes as well as excluded debt that we have previously voted to exclude. And in Bolton, that amounts to 91.7% of all of our revenue. This is called the taxable levy limit. The next largest source of revenue are local receipts. This is mostly vehicle excise taxes, and there are a few other things in there as well. That's about $2 million, and that represents 6.1% of our revenue. And then you can see the other sources on the screen. It goes down from there in much smaller amounts. The bottom line is projected revenue for FY26 is $32,465,030. So those are the revenue sources. Total expenditures, if we go to the next slide. So like I mentioned before, the total expenditures are made up of the operating budget, that's the first 5 lines on this chart, as well as capital expenses and other, a few other assessments. So the number one line in the operating budget is the education line. There's actually a lot that goes into this line. So we have 2 school districts that we get assessments from. It's the Neshoba Regional School District and the Minuteman District, as well as the debt assessments from each of these school districts. So combined, operating assessments from 2 school districts plus excluded debt from those school districts is about $22.7 million. That's almost 2/3 of our budget, represents a 12.2% increase over FY25. You'll hear some more details about the school budget in a few minutes. The debt for the new high school is also rolled up into this number, and it is one of the big drivers of that 12.2% increase. Below that, when we get into the rest of the operating budget, the town departments' budgets are broken into 2 pieces. The first is salary and wages. That's at about $4.7 million. It's actually a decrease of almost 2% from where we were last year. And then all the other operating costs for our town departments, that's about $3 million. It's a modest increase of 2.4% from last year. The next line is insurance benefits and retirements, $2.4 million. This is a significant increase, 25% increase, and is one of those big cost drivers in the operating budget. And our debt service is decreasing a little bit from last year, about 8%. And then finally, we have a few warrant articles. We'll discuss those more in a couple minutes, and a few other assessments. And that gives us the total budgeted expenditures for FY26, $34,392,136. Okay, so the next slide. So the difference between those 2 numbers, the expected revenue and our total budgeted expenditures, that difference is where we get the override amount. That's the $1,927,105. That's where that number comes from. Okay, I'll show you a little more detail specifically on the operating budget. Next slide. Okay, so again, the top line is that education line. That's the education assessment at about $22.7 million. The next largest line item in the operating budget is public safety. That's $3.2 million, and that's a 2% decrease from last year's public safety budget. The next largest piece is employee benefits. It's at about $2.26 million, and again, that's showing a large increase. That's about a 26% increase, and is one of those budget drivers. General government at $1.8 million. This is essentially flat, up 0.1% from last year. Public works at $1.8 million, also modestly up, less than 2%. Debt service, again, is dropping down a little bit. Culture and recreation, about $650,000. That is increasing less than 1%. And human services, $250,000. That's up 1.3%. And then finally, other insurance costs, which is also showing a a significant increase. It's not a huge portion of the budget, but those costs are rising faster than most of the other costs. And so this gives us our FY26 operating budget total. That's where we get the $33,957,500. Okay, next slide. This is just a graphic representation of what I just described. You can see education is the largest piece of that pie at almost 2/3. Public safety is another large piece, employee benefits, and you can see the others there. Okay, next slide. I mentioned that there were a couple other financial items. So there are two capital items. These are separate warrants. We'll discuss these in a little more detail when they come up. But basically, Article 22 is a state-mandated wastewater treatment facility upgrade that has to happen. This will fund the FY26 portion of it for $33,551. And Article 23 is a replacement boiler for the Florence Sawyer School, $81,892, and that will be our final installment to cover that. And I mentioned earlier that 2 years ago we used a portion of our stabilization fund. It's one of the best practices we try to follow to replenish that fund within 2 years. And so Article 7 will complete the replenishment of the stabilization fund for $230,000. These articles are being funded through free cash or other available funds. There is no additional debt to fund these capital items. Okay, next slide. So we have some financial policy targets that we use to try to guide us to maintain the financial health of the town. The first is the certified free cash that we go into the fiscal year with. This is a little below where we'd like it to be. We'd like it to be between 3% and 5%. If this budget's approved, it'll be at 2.4%, which is a little low, but it's trending in the right direction. Our free cash balance, we like to see that to be at a bare minimum $350,000. This budget will increase that a little bit to $478,000. And again, that will help bring our overall reserves, which include free cash, stabilization funds, and an overlay reserve. It'll bring it up to about 5.6%, which is a little below our target of 6%, but again is trending in the right direction. Our debt service payments are healthy at 3.5%. We like to keep those below 5% of our general fund revenues. And in this proposed budget, we will be funding 100% of our OPEB required contributions for FY26. Okay, so one question then is, so what's the impact of this override? If we go to the next slide. So here it is. In the town of Bolton, the average single-family assessed value for FY25 is $820,577. For that average value home, the tax bill impact of this override will be $952. If your home assesses for less than $820,000, you'll see less of an impact. If it assesses for more than $827,000, you will see more of an impact. Next slide. I want to pause for 1 second, and we did a little bit of a 20-year look back on sort of where we've been back to the last time we were talking about an override. Back in fiscal year 2004, the town's population was about 4,400 people. Back then, we were spending about $1,288 per person. The town expenditures just divided by the number of people. If that had kept pace with inflation up to FY24, the population grew to 5,700. If that per person spending had kept pace with inflation, the town should be spending about $2,138 per person. But we were actually only spending $1,777,000. So on an inflation-adjusted basis, the town expenditures are actually lower per person today than they were 20 years ago. And this is really just a testament to how carefully the budget has been managed and how closely it's been scrutinized over the years, and the fact that we've been able to find some efficiencies along the way. It's also interesting to note that the actual town services have increased in 20 years. 20 years ago, we did not have a Parks and Rec department. 20 years ago, there was no Council on Aging. So services have increased, but the per person expenditures have actually been reduced. Okay, so we've mentioned a couple times the $1.927 million override. And we all recognize that that's a significant number, and it's a significant ask of the residents of the town to increase tax revenue to do that. So if collectively we all decide that a budget override is just not acceptable, we still need to have a balanced budget when the fiscal year starts on the 1st of July. So if a budget override is not approved, we need to find that $1.927 million within the town operating budget. I think it's instructive to take a look at the budget and split it into a few different categories. The first, of course, is that education assessment. We are part of a regional school district with 2 other towns. If those 2 other towns, Lancaster and Stowe, approve their budgets, and indications are that they will, then that education number is an assessment to us, and at this point we can't change that number, and nothing that we'll do here or nothing that we can do in Bolton will affect that number. We're on the hook to pay that $22.7 million amount. We actually have other assessments that we're also on the hook for. Some examples are our regional dispatch services, Medicare taxes, and there are a number of other assessments. Those amount to, it's 11% of the budget. It's about $3.7 million in other assessments that we have to pay, and we can't affect those amounts. There's another small segment of the budget, about $475,000, that while they're not assessments, it's mandatory spending. Things like the state requires us to test the wells in the vicinity of the transfer station, the traffic lights on 117. All of these things are things that we have to pay for, and so they're mandatory spending. So then what we're left with, I've called discretionary, that's about $7 million. Those are those things in the budget that we have a little bit of control over the amounts. If you go to the next slide, and so this is how that's broken out, but that $7 million really represents everything that you would think of as town services. It is all the folks that work in town hall. It's the entire police department. It's the entire fire department. It's all of DPW. It's the transfer station. It's the library. It's Parks and Recreation. It's Council on Aging. All of those things are within the $7 million. So if the budget override is not approved, that 1.972 shortfall has to come out of the $7 million here in this operating budget. Okay, so at this point, I will turn this over to Brian Boyle, the chair of our select board, to talk about some of the specifics of where we might see cuts.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. And before I start, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who turned out tonight for this meeting. I think it's really important that we have so many people participating, so thank you. As Bob mentioned, we designed a budget that preserved services in the town, and then we saw that there was basically a gap between revenues and expenditures of $1.9 million. So we came forward with this override, but in the event that the override does not pass, we have to create a balanced budget by July 1st. And so what that means is we have to find $1.9 million out of solely the town side of the budget. As Bob mentioned, we can't do anything about the school assessment. So there were really only a few places that we could even look to find that $1.9 million in the event that we have to make cuts. The first 3 items here are what I put in the bucket of sort of fiscal sustainability items. Now, we think it's a best practice for our long-term financial future to replenish our stabilization fund. But if the override doesn't pass, we probably won't be able to do that. It's also in our best long-term interest to make sure that we don't keep rolling into every fiscal year with virtually no free cash to fund capital expenditures. But if the override doesn't pass, we would have to use almost $400,000 and draw down our free cash to a bare minimum. And then finally, we have wanted to fund our other post-employment benefits at 100%, which is actually one of the many factors that bond rating agencies look at when they assign our current AAA rating. We would like to get back into that habit, but if the override fails, then that may be something that we also have to take off the board. So once we get beyond those first three fiscal responsibility measures, then you're into core town services. And just keep in mind, Bob already showed you, our entire public safety budget is just around $3 million. So to find $1 million, you're gonna affect programs that all of us care about. So if this override fails, the Parks and Recreation funding would be eliminated. The Council on Aging funding would be eliminated. The EMT cadet program, all of these items up here, we would have to close the transfer station, and that's only $200,000 toward that 1.9 gap that we'd have to make up. Our library hours would be dramatically reduced, not hopefully to the point that it would lose certification, but the ability that the town residents have now would be severely diminished in utilizing that resource. We would get off of our current practice of purchasing a replacement cruiser for the police force, and our local road improvements would be cut in half. We would reduce town hall hours to the tune of $250,000, and even after making all of those cuts, we would still have to ask our police chief and our fire chief to make additional cuts from the public safety budget. And I'll just say, I think we agreed collectively that we were trying in all of this to preserve as much of the public safety component of the town's budget as we could. But even then, we had to start touching public safety. And quite honestly, I would include Council on Aging in public safety, but there's only so many places you can look. So these are the things, these are the levers that we would have to resort to if the override fails tonight and fails next Monday. Next slide, please. Obviously, those of us who were involved in this budget have significant concerns if the override fails. We've mentioned the loss of core services, and it's important to remember that they don't just go away for a year, right? These services can't be brought back unless the town comes back for an override of at least this magnitude, and the magnitude will grow if we defer it. As I mentioned, we could see a potential downgrade in our bond rating because of our failure to replenish our stabilization and fully fund our OPEB. It puts us on sort of another unstable footing this time next year. And then the last thing, which I think is really important to appreciate, you saw a lot of departments that would be slashed or hours would be reduced. And in many cases, this would be the difference between a talented current employee having full-time job in Bolton or having a part-time job in Bolton and leaving. So we have a real concern about the loss of talented team members. Next slide, please. I think this is really just summing up. We're asking for the support, obviously, tonight of this budget because we think it keeps services in place and it puts us on stable financial footing for several years to come. So thank you, and thank you, Bob. Oh, sorry, I just realized we talked about this at a recent select board meeting, but at a lot of the public information sessions, people have asked about, well, what comes next after the override passes? So I just want to briefly touch on a few things. As Bob mentioned, 92% of our revenue comes from residential property taxes. So I think we have to continue to explore ways of increasing and diversifying our revenue sources. We also, I mean, as we have always done on the town side, we look for savings and efficiencies. We'll continue to do that and to report out to the public about what we're doing. I think, and I've mentioned this to a lot of the folks involved in the school district, we want to seek revenue sharing agreement on certain revenue sharing principles between us and our school districts, because we only have a certain amount of new revenue every year, and we can't be in a situation where the lion's share of it is automatically going out the door to the school district and leaving nothing left for the town services. And then finally, I guess in years when everything is going well, we don't get a lot of people that show up to our select board meetings or our town meetings. But I hope that this year, more people are going to be encouraged to stay involved, and we're committed to using our select board meetings as a venue for making sure you're getting the information you need as town residents. So thank you.
Thanks, Brian and Bob. All right, now we will do the presentation by the Neshoba Regional School District, Superintendent Kirk Downey, and Ross Mulkerin, Director of Ops.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Kirk Downing. I am the superintendent here in Neshoba, the Neshoba Regional School District. I want to thank you all for coming out tonight and for engaging us throughout this process, and not just the school committee meetings, but our joint finance meetings and then the meetings that the town of Bolton has hosted as well. And I want to give my appreciation to the finance committee, specifically Bob, and our select board for engaging in those conversations as well. I'm going to hand the microphone over to our finance and operations director, Mr. Ross Mulkerin, to discuss the content of our presentation.
Thank you, Superintendent Downing. And again, I would reiterate all the same gratitudes towards the folks up here, and thank you for your participation this evening as well. I think from our standpoint, this was a difficult fiscal year for us as well, and we appreciate the partnership with the town as we've tried to work together towards a common point while maintaining an excellent education for the students of these three towns. So on the next slide, we're just going to cut to the chase of the school district budget. From an operating lens, this is outside of the school debt that we'll talk to in a little bit. From a strict operating lens, our overall budget is still increasing by $3.5 million essentially, even though we've worked really hard to be in a place where all three towns feel comfortable with the number that we're putting forward with regards to the assessment, which is calculated through the regional agreement and is driven by the enrollment over a 5-year average. So here's where we are today, and with the school committee operating budget that was voted 2 months ago. So of that $3.5 million, a huge majority of the special education services outside of the district and the transportation to get there has gone up significantly. These are costs that we do not have a control over as a school district. They are greatly dictated either by the operational services division at the state or by individual contracting companies themselves. So we've seen the back end, sort of to Bob's slide earlier with regards to what does inflation look like as compared to operating budgets. We are now seeing the result of that as well in these sectors of our school budget. These are legally obligated services. We can't say that they cost too much. We do a lot to expand our programs within the district and educate students in an inclusive environment. However, we do have an obligation legally to provide a free and appropriate public education to each and every one of the students in this school district. Approximately $1.4 million has gone into insurance increases. The majority of that is with our healthcare premiums. We've done some recent adjustments by participating in some programs to bring down that potential cost. However, we still have a significant increase on that, as well as we have to calculate in our operating insurances like workman's comp, like our auto insurance, casualty, property, those types of things. $372,000 goes to mandatory charter and school choice payments. Again, these are dictated by the state. This is driven by how many students go to school choice programs, how many students go to the charter schools, but we're obligated to pay those. And again, we do not have a choice as to where those students go if they choose to go there. And then another $74,000 is just on our obligation with our bus contract. So we're in a very good position with our contract right now. We did a 3-year and we're in our 1-year option. And given the market conditions that we see across other school districts, we are really in a good position with that. However, it's an obligation on an increase that gets our students back and forth to school every day. So there's very little left after all of that in our increase. It's about $62,000, which is not part of those obligated costs. But we do want to let you know that as far as our school-based budgets go, we've only increased our school-based budgets by $7,000 outside of personnel. Books, pens, textbooks, classroom technology, those types of things have only gone up $7,000 across our 6 schools. We've deferred a significant amount of technology, facilities work, things like that to next year or potentially further down the road trying to find creative solutions, similar to what Mr. Boyle shared about we're tapping into all of our possible solutions. We've done that. We've obligated $1.4 million out of our excess and deficiency fund, which is our free cash, similar to the towns. So we're obligating a significant amount of our free cash to support this budget. And then also, we've reduced 22.16 personnel positions within the district that are currently in our budget and currently filled with personnel. We obviously don't want to see anyone go within our school district. We'll have some retirements and things like that, but there are currently people in classrooms today or in our buildings today that will not be with us next year because of these cuts in positions. So if we go to the next slide, please. So just to give you a sense of sort of the scope of this, we've looked at every sector of our school district. We have not left a sort of area not touched by these cuts. I do want to point out the small graphic on the left-hand side. 5 years ago, we had a 510 FTE, that's a full-time equivalent. Those are positions within the district. We are now down to FY26 of 463.89. That's a 9% reduction in personnel in the operating budget, while our overall school enrollment has only dropped 3% in that same time frame. I do also want to point out that from FY25 to our budget workshop, we were hopeful that we could put forward some positions, but the fiscal landscape of our three towns obviously changed that, and we are now down to that yellow, where we're down 22.16 positions from right now to the budget that begins on July 1. Next slide, please. So just the overall fiscal picture, you can see the operating budget and our debt service. I'll talk a little bit about debt service in the next couple of slides, but you can see that the overall operating budget, this is our daily expenses. This is what it takes to run the school district and provide an excellent education. From FY25 to FY26 has gone up 5.25%. And again, you know, we have our obligations that we showed, but that still includes the reduction of those positions. Next slide, please. Oh, so this is a little bit cut off. Not sure what's happening. You can't fully see it, but we do have our debt service. Almost 2 years ago now, your town, along with the towns of Stowe and Lancaster, approved the construction of the new high school and approved the debt exclusion. So we've bonded two portions of that so far. Since that vote, we did get news that the state will take on more money for us. However, we're still obligated to build the building, and it takes bonding to get that construction done. So we're partway there with our bonding. And that is part of the increase in the debt service. Much like when Minuteman came on board, you had that increase. It is now time for the Neshoba Regional High School to come online. Next slide, please. So after all the calculations that are within your regional agreement for the Neshoba Regional School District, the overall operating budget assessment, that includes your local contribution that is dictated by the state, along with the variable assessment from the regional agreement. The Bolton share is going up 5.2%. Obviously, the debt service is going up significantly as we've taken on our second bond for the high school construction, and you can see the total assessment here as well. So that is the summary of significant amount of work that began back in September. Much like it was mentioned by the town, we have a large array of educational materials for you to learn about the school district budgeting process, as well as specifics around the FY26 development as well, available online. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the Neshoba Regional School District presentation. All right. Now, everyone have their warrant? Page 45. The next thing we're going to do is I'm going to read through the budget. I'm not going to read every line, but I'm going to read each department. And what I want you to do is, if anyone wants to have a discussion about a department, raise your hand and say, hold, and make sure I hear you. It takes a village. But we're going to keep track of that, and then we're going to go through it for questions in the order that I'm reading it, so in the order that it is in the warrant. So the people who are the first ones to call a hold, would be the first ones at the mic to queue up. All right. FY 2026 budget, general government, select board, $19,620. Administrator, $278,640. Advisory committee, $171. Reserve fund, $125,000. Town accountant, $126,608. Board of Assessors, $171,013. Treasurer, $134,466. Tax collector, $93,526. Human resources, $14,058. Legal services, $130,000. MIS, $83,693. Town clerk, $121,430. Elections, $3,530. Street listing and registrars, $3,550. Conservation Commission, $103,710. Planning Board, $149,390. Appeals Board, $200. Economic Development, $750. Town Buildings, $241,063. Town Hall, $44,717. Town Reports, $3150. Total general government, $1,848,285. I went kind of fast, but I would have stopped. Did I miss anything, or does anyone want to hold on any of those items on general government? Okay. Public safety. Total public safety building, $237,117. Police department, $1,808,961. Okay, thank you very much. That's a hold on police department. Fire EMS, $758,932. That's a hold, thank you. Building inspector, $35,133. Plumbing and gas inspector, $20,733. Wiring inspector, $24,011. Emergency management, $3,900. Animal control officer, $21,068. Traffic lights, $2,235. Tree warden, $72,027. Communications, $215,553. Total public safety, $3,199,670. So we had two holds there, police and fire. Education. Total Neshoba Regional School District, $21,139,277. Hold. Thank you. Minuteman Voc Tech, $1,497,343. Post-secondary Voc Ed, $30,885. For a total under education of $22,667,504. So we had one hold on Neshoba Regional. Public Works, Highway, $1,001,323. Construction and maintenance, $209,100. Snow and ice, $180,000. Street lighting, $10,638. Transfer station, $295,842. Landfill, $42,000. Sewer, $27,380. Water, $6,000. Cemetery, $10,000. Total public works, $1,782,283. Human services, Board of Health, $70,895. Nursing, $10,537. Council on Aging, $130,908. Veteran Services, $40,932. Total Human Services, $253,272. Culture and Recreation, Library, $565,876. Recreation, $82,484. Historical Commission, $6150. Celebration Memorial Day, $4,000. Total culture and recreation, $658,510. Debt service. I'm not going to read the individual items, but the total debt service is $1,144,948, down from last year. Employee benefits. Worcester Regional Retirement Assessment, $994,717. Workers' Comp, $29,589. Unemployment compensation, $9,000. Health insurance, $1,152,144. Life insurance, $1,400. Medicare tax, $68,412, for a total on employee benefits of $2,255,261. Other insurance, $147,765. Total budget, $33,957,500. So if anyone who asked for a hold would like to come up to one of the microphones, we can answer any questions. And since there weren't that many, if there are other questions, feel free to come up to the microphones. So the first one, I think, was police. Go ahead.
Austin Clark, Hudson Road. I got both just a comment and a question. I want to thank everybody for your time. It's the select board, you've done a great job. I really appreciate all the hard work. The things I'm concerned with. And Brian, I know you and I spoke on this individually. I just kind of wanted to make my comment known. When you look at the fiscal year budgets for 2025, or for 2025 and 2026, you'll see the police department has overtime of $200,000 both fiscal years. It's $400,000, and we're facing a $2 million override. This is 20% of the override in overtime. In my experience in both public and private sectors, the first thing to go when you face budget issues is overtime. When I raised that issue, I was told there really wasn't a willingness to compromise on public safety. No, I can get behind that. I understand that. If that is the argument, then my question is, can't that money be reallocated to something like training, where we are currently spending more on office supplies than we are training our officers?
So first, let me just make one correction. The overtime is about $200,000 per year in the police department budget. Sorry, thought I heard 400,000. Okay.
So, and if I misstate anything, I would invite our police chief to clarify. But when it comes to overtime, one of the challenges is that when you're in a situation where your police department is actually understaffed, or you're in the process of trying to hire to bring your police department back up to its full complement, there's going to be higher overtime by pulling in current employees to fill those additional shifts. So one of the hopes is that as we, our chief is working really hard to bring in new members to the department, and as we do that, you'll see a decrease in overtime because those shifts will be filled by full-time officers. And Chief, if there's anything you want to add, feel free. But thank you, Mr. Clark.
Okay, thank you. Next is Fire EMS. Ken Troop.
Ken Troop, Meadow Road. Under Fire and EMS, I want to make a comment on line 5120, which is the Cadet EMT program. That's on the hit list for the override, and I'd like to have one of our cadets, Eden Botello, tell you a little bit about it so that you understand the context of it, how it fits in, and why it shouldn't be cut.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Eden Botello, and I'm an EMT cadet at Neshoba Regional High School. For those who don't know, the Neshoba Cadet EMT program was a program that was founded in 1988, and we were given a state waiver that allows us as EMTs to be certified at the age of 16 and a half. And it is a 3-year program with academic credit for each student each year. And as a year 1, you take the state-approved basic EMT course, and then you get certified. And once certified, we are able to respond to calls from school in our donated vehicle equipped with emergency lights and sirens and respond to those emergencies. The year 2 and 3 course involves weekly continuing practical EMT education, and cadets also work with the communities teaching younger students CPR, conducting annual CPR marathons, and having booths at events such as the Bolton Fair, as well as, to teach. And of the more than 500 cadets who have completed the program, there are more than 100 former cadets who are now doctors, EMTs, and other medical professionals. Former cadets who do not continue in medicine say that the course has empowered them and built their confidence levels more than any other course. And I can speak to that. I am going into nursing, and I think that this has been more than fundamental in that process for me. And the Cadet the program is jointly funded and supported annually by Bolton and Neshoba Regional High School. So in addition to the Bolton budget of $19,372, Neshoba contributes $15,000 within the school budget. The Bolton Fire Department helps with teaching and mentoring of the cadets, and Neshoba has further shown its support of the program by including in the new high school design a simulated ambulance interior and dedicated training space. School and fire department leaders are part of a volunteer cadet advisory board, which I'm also a part of, that coordinates amongst organizations, instructors, and cadets. I hope you will approve this cadet EMT budget as well as the override. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Are there any other comments about the fire EMS? Okay, the next one that I have is education, the Neshoba Regional School District.
Good evening. My name is Ted Barton. I live at 35 Vaughan Hill Road. I'm 73 years old, recently retired after a 50-year career as an engineer and a business owner and manager. My wife Iris and I have lived on Vaughan Hill for 29 years, and we hope to continue there for many years to come. I apologize in advance for reading this. I have a lot of numbers in it, and I want to get them straight. So I'm here because I have grave concerns about the proposed $1.9 million override. And I put a hold on the Neshoba piece simply because it's the biggest piece of the budget, and it seemed like an appropriate place to speak about this.
That's fine.
So I realize that our selectmen and advisory board are doing what they feel is best for the town, and I certainly respect the many hours of unpaid effort that they devote to town service, but I do want to offer a contrarian view. So I want to start by looking at the impact on a representative senior couple, in this case my wife and I want to spend a few minutes on the broader override issues. So our home on Vaughan Hill is assessed at just over $1 million, 24% above the Bolton average. Our current real estate taxes are just over $17,000 a year. If the override passes, this will go to $19,400, including the first parts of the new high school debt service. For fiscal '27, a levy limit increase plus the last piece of the high school debt will bring this, by my estimate, to $20,600. Add to this a typical excise tax, and we will be paying well over $22,000 a year. So for perspective, this is nearly half of our after-tax Social Security income. Needless to say, this is a lot of money. And in many respects, my wife and I are fairly fortunate, and I know there are many seniors in town attempting to make do on much less, but I offer this as an example of the finances that are involved, at least for one couple. Moreover, the override amount is described as $976 for the quote average homeowner, or about $1,200 for our home. And as I think was covered in the earlier presentations, this is a permanent increase in your taxes. So assuming you live in Bolton for the next 15 years, this would be a tax increase of more than $18,000 over and above the regular increases and the high school debt service. Like I said, this is a lot of money to continue business as usual, especially given that it is Senior Appreciation Month in Bolton. I'm being a wise guy. I did appreciate the proclamation, folks, so that was a nice touch. So moving on to my broader concerns, the override is being pitched as necessary to maintain town services at current levels and to pay our ever-increasing school costs in the face of a 2-year spike in general inflation and the expiration of one-time COVID-related federal funding. I have a different view of the override proposal. The town's taxpayers are being asked to fund business as usual where benefit costs have reached 50% of the town payroll, business as usual where continuing losses at the transfer station are subsidized to the tune of $200,000 per year, business as usual where the assessment for a slowly shrinking school district population is now more than 2/3 of the Bolton budget. Business as usual for the school district health insurance costs to increase by 20% in a single year. Business as usual for Neshoba to maintain a 38-person district office. Business as usual for Neshoba to have an unfunded OPEB liability of approximately $50 million. Business as usual where the town and Neshoba have their pension funds in a county system ranked in the bottom 5 statewide. That's of 105 retirement systems. And business as usual for the town and Neshoba to get but a few crumbs from the $61 billion state budget. If we vote to approve this nearly $2 million override budget, we are saying to our town leaders, our school superintendent, our school committee, and our state representatives that this is all okay. No need to rein in benefit costs, no need to take a hard look at decades worth of built up bureaucracy, no need to revisit decisions made in more flush times, no need to put operations like the transfer station on a self-supporting basis. The taxpayers will voluntarily continue to foot the bill for business as usual. This is not the message we should be sending. If we're serious about keeping Bolton an affordable place to live, especially for our seniors, our schools and our town need to live within our means. And our state leaders need to hear that Bolton and other small towns will not continue to be treated as chumps. This is why I am voting no on the override, and I urge you to do the same. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you. Any other comments on the budget? Come on up. Anyone else has a comment, please come to a microphone. Now's the time. The next item is the vote.
Michael Trotter, Hudson Road. I think you'll like my Boston accent. I just want to give a comment in case the 2.5 does not pass, which I hope is the case. I think you need to take a more serious look at what you would cut and really think about what is necessary for Bolton versus what's a nice to have. I kind of like the protection that Chief Hamburger gives to the town. And if he says he needs a cruiser, we should get him one, not question it. I'm probably not going to be very popular for saying this, but a library is a nice to have. It has nothing to do with our protection and the services to the town, so think about it.
Thank you. Yes. If we could please hold the applause down, we'll give everyone a chance to speak. Thank
My name
you.
is Chuck McCormick. I live at 166 Vaughn Hill Road, neighbor. I wanted to say that, and I'm also, just full disclosure, I'm on the Council on Aging. I'm a volunteer board member. I think we should vote for this override. I'm not happy about it. It means my tax is going to go up. But you know something? I want to live in a town that I'm proud to live in. And if we, I spent 35 years in finance, and I have a pretty good sense of what's been going on. And I trust these guys are looking at the numbers pretty closely. From what I hear about what Neshoba's doing, a lot of what we want to control, we can't. So now we're faced with how are we going to recover $1.97 million. And if we start cutting things like cutting the Council of Aging, which is 22% of the people in our town, you're going to see a lot of people suffer. You're going to see people who Lisa takes to take care of their dialysis, or people who need fuel assistance. It's a shame. And if we can't afford to serve our seniors, and I appreciate what you're saying, then we are going to have a town that we're not going to want to live in. So please vote for the override.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, please.
I'm going to go back and forth. Penny?
Hi, I'm Penny Gerken. I'm chairman of the Council on Aging, and obviously I supporting the Council on Aging. But I have another point I want to make. If you decide to vote for this override, it's going to cost you, depending on how many rooms you have in your house, between $850 to $925 a year. Okay? Okay. Now, that's fine. Now, if we don't pass the override, that means the transfer station goes away. Correct? Okay, so bye-bye transfer station. Well, you can't bury your garbage in the town of Bolton in your backyard anymore. Things have changed in the last 100 years. So therefore, you will need garbage pickup. The average cost of garbage pickup for 1 can of garbage and 1 can of recycling is around $825. So I personally would rather spend the money on services rather than give it to a garbage collector to pick up my garbage. It seems like an obvious answer. So, thank you.
Thank you, Penny. Okay, thank you.
Hi, Tom Ballard, 27 Bear Hill Road. First of all, again, I respect everything that all the hard work you guys put in. This is incredibly difficult situation, and quite honestly, the budget leaves little room for anything to take services. We're razor thin. The problem that we have in the community is a revenue problem. And one thing I just want to note is, and maybe ask the question to the select board and the town administrator, we have currently, I think roughly around $850,000 of taxes that are unpaid to the town. About 60% of these are taxes that were, property taxes that are delinquent from developers and other people who have come in and, built neighborhoods and buildings and everything else. When we talk about not repeating business as usual and moving forward and a path forward, what's going to be done what are we doing differently? What are we currently doing to collect on the money that we owe? I mean, this is a revenue problem that we have, and this money is owed to the town.
Okay, thank you for the question.
Could I just briefly respond to that? Thank you, Mr. Ballard, for the question. So at our most recent select board meeting this past Thursday, our town administrator had been working with our town tax collector to share some information about the fact that we do have a strategy that we've been pursuing already to collect on those unpaid taxes. So I'm not going to go into all the details now, but there's roughly 36 properties that are in that status. We have 7 that are already in the court process, which can take years. And we're always looking at how to bring additional properties through that process. One thing to note, though, is that our strategy up until now had been based on the laws that existed up until the past year. The Commonwealth changed some of the laws around tax title such that the recovery that towns can get from foreclosing on a property is very different from what it was years ago. And so we're going to have to reassess exactly how much we're spending to try to take properties through that process versus how much we can actually expect in revenue. And I know our tax collector is here if she wants to correct anything I might have misstated, but the fact is we have a strategy to get those monies in. We've been pursuing it. There are limits in how fast it goes because of the court process. And I know that our tax collector, Michelle Carlisle, has said she's always happy to talk to people individually if they have questions about the status of any property. But thank you for the question.
Thanks.
Hi, excuse me. Jacob Steinman, 72 Bolton Woods Way. I just wanted to come up here because I am a parent, one of a number in town, but so far we haven't gotten to hear from that segment of the population. I am voting yes for this override. I'm asking you to do so too. I'm hearing about how, libraries and parks and rec, these are all things that I use, my family uses, my children use. We use the library in town. It's a place where we can go to get books. It's a place where kids can gather, and there are activities there every day, every week, that it is open. It's a support structure for the community. The parks, we are out in the woods, again, weekly. I know a lot of other parents and families are in town too. These are all services that we use, and it's not just a nice to have. We're not just sitting in our houses by ourselves all the time. This is a community. We're out there in the community, and these are part of what makes that community. And listen, I have 2 kids. I don't have an enormous budget floating around. I'd love to not have my taxes go up, but I'm willing to have them go up in the service of keeping the community and the activities in the community available. I'm willing to have my taxes go up in service of making sure that seniors in this community get the services they need. I don't use the Council on Aging. I'm the oldest guy in my family. I'm not quite there yet. But I'm okay spending some money knowing that other people in this community are going to get the services they need. That is what a community is supposed to be. So I am fine spending a little bit extra to support everybody here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Over here.
Just briefly, my name is Jeff Carr, 215 Long Hill. We've been here since 2017, and we do love Bolton, frankly. What a great town. This process that these guys have gone through started last September. Probably last August, they were having conversations, well, what are we going to do about this? What are we going to do about that? And they put together a budget well thought out, planned out in great detail, spread the pain across all of the organizations where it had to be spread, and came through with a budget asking for a override that hasn't been asked for in how many years? We voted for residential taxation structure all these years. All the seniors here that have been here for 20 years, you voted for residential only, farmland only tax structures. Why don't we have some stores? Why don't we have some office buildings? Why don't we have some transfer stations doing, like merchandise transfer? I don't mean the refuse. So if we're going to get out of this, we have to plan for not only watching our money, but creating new structures for revenue. It ain't hard. We are an attractive town. We will draw the folks that need to come and help us pay for our budgets. That's all.
Thank you.
So I noticed that there was very legitimately.
Can you please identify yourself?
So I'm Kara Cantwell. I live at 147 Sugar Road. I noticed that there was nobody even remotely close to my age getting up or speaking at all. I'm in my late 20s. I help my elderly parents do everything. I'm taking care of them, and I felt the need to speak up because although I do not want to see any programs cut, my parents can't afford a tax raise. They've lived here for 30 years. I've lived here my entire life. And if they lose their house, I can't live here anymore. And as somebody who is in their late 20s, but childless, and would love to remain in a town that I love, and would like my parents to remain in a house that they bought to live in forever, I think we should really think about what we're voting for, and if we are actually just voting out our senior population and pricing them out of being able to live in a town that they love, and pricing out single, childless individuals who have lived here their whole lives and would like to continue to live here and continue to contribute to the town that we love. I went to high school here. I saw almost all of our arts funding cut. And that is incredibly hard to see. I don't want to see any further programs cut, but I think we really need to take a look at what spending we can cut, and if we can vote in an option that caps what can be raised, so it's not a limitless tax raise, essentially, that what we have, because there was no cap on how much taxes can be raised every year to cover this. And that's just my opinion as somebody who's a different demographic than what we've heard from.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Hello, Mr. Moderator. My name is Graham Sleeker, 39 Whitcomb Road, and I'd like to make kind of a high-level comment and an observation. One of my neighbors mentioned about the whole business as usual. I would argue that maybe we're asking the wrong question about how to meet our budget requirements. The response to budget shortfalls is always raise more money. The response is never how are we spending that money and how are we extracting value from it. And I think if we take a look at what is being done at the federal level with the whole DOGE initiative, where government is looking very critically at the overall efficiency of how you're spending money. Arguments about closing the transfer case. Arguments about,
Please.
Arguments about how you're closing the transfer station. Perhaps the argument should be how you consolidate that function into maybe a quasi partnership between some public agency and some private company or things of that sort. But I would argue that before you say we have a shortfall, let's eliminate that service, take a critical look at what it actually costs to deliver that service and maybe change the model. Because that system is proving at the federal level that it's extracting a lot more value from dollars. And I think we might want to take a look at that. And years ago, I sat on advisory, and we didn't really look at that as much as we did as where do the budget cuts come from, and it was kind of a binary thing. And I would argue that maybe we should look at how those dollars are being spent to achieve the value that we're looking for before we just cut things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Over here.
Hi, my name is My name is Pat Westwater Jong. I live at 3 Autumn Lane. I moved here in 1985, raised my kids here, and Barbara Brown told me in the 1990s that even though I wasn't born here, I am a townie. Pat, you are a townie. So, and I am 74 years old. So I struggle already to pay my income taxes. I have a question that I don't expect to be answered here this evening, but I'm putting it out there about the how realistic it is and reasonable it is to continue funding the town government, or at least especially the schools, solely through residential taxes, and about the possibility of graduated income taxes or some other form of taxation that might be a more reasonable way to pay for our town services, especially the schools. And in spite of the fact that it is a struggle for me to pay my taxes already, I would not want to live in a town that doesn't adequately support our schools or have these other services. I think they're very important to Bolton and who we are. Thanks.
Thank you, Pat.
My name is Sam Bosley. I live at Laurel Road. I am new to town in contrast to many folks, but my husband is not. And so we moved here with the hopes of being able to raise our family. And seeing this override is really important to us because we came, and my husband works for the town. And it's slightly scary to see some of these thoughts of what would happen to a lot of the services that are provided by the town for a lot of people who are at stake and vulnerable populations. So I hope that we can look into different revenue sources, but I am very fearful for what would happen to the town if we cut services. Thank you.
Thank you. One more here.
Hi, I'm Catherine Fox. I'm at 27 Woodside. I've been living in Bolton my entire life, born and raised. And I just want to say that I'm going to be voting yes because these services are important to us as a community. And if we vote to gut these services, they're not going to come back easy. It's going to be so much harder to get them back. So we should keep them and protect them. That's all.
Thank you.
I'm Peter Oxner. Many years ago, I was up here asking for an override. Excuse me. And it was a difficult thing, and the town approved it. I was a chairperson of the Bolton School Committee, Bolton and Stowe, Emerson School Committee, and we worked hard. We did the budget. We came here, and the town supported us. I'm going to vote yes. When my kids were young, 40 years ago, the town supported them. And now I'm a senior, and I'm going to support it. But I know that we're looking at another problem next year, and there's going to be another round of funding that you're going to have to get. And the people that have spoken about things that we could do different, I would urge this group of people to take a look at all of those suggestions and see whether there are things that we can change in how we do business. So it's not business as usual, and see if we can avoid having this same kind of discussion a year from now. Because we're facing difficult times, and I wouldn't just dismiss what people are saying that are feeling the pinch. I think the right answer is to vote yes tonight and to work very, very hard to see what we can do to avoid having the same discussion a year from now. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Schiller. I live at 9 Pondside Lane, of course, in Bolton. I'm up here because no one has spoken about us grayheads, okay? That's what I call myself, a grayhead. No one spoke about our COA, about our transportation getting from here to there. I cannot drive. I have an injury to my head. I have other issues, medical issues. without the van and the Council on Aging and Heather and Lisa, I don't know what I do. They talk to me when I'm down and about. My husband died of Agent Orange, and you don't know what it's like. I was a trauma nurse, and you don't know what I've seen. None of you have seen what I have seen in my lifetime. So I think you, the people of this town, owe us senior citizens, some veterans, whatever, but you owe us. We went through the wars, went through everything, depression, everything, and here we are, and we're worried about all these other issues. Worry about us senior citizens, because I'll tell you what, at Fort Devens, I belong to an organization, and what is happening to our veterans now, which are senior citizens, they're committing suicide, they're running away, they're sleeping on the streets, and they have nowhere to go, and I'm next to do it, because I live only on Social Security. My husband never got his military benefits, nor did I. I have nothing except Social Security, which is $3,400 a month. How many of you can live on that? How many can you pay your taxes, your HOAs? Unfortunately, I did. That was a mistake. How many people can live like me? How many people can live on that amount of money? I bet you there's not one or two people that can. I've had it. I lived here 30 years ago, Fort Devens, and it was nothing like this. And it seems that we have influx of very wealthy people that come into the town. They want a new school. My son taught here. His name is in the gym. Top line, embroidered as he was a wrestler, a football player. 2 of my sons graduated from here. I have 5 altogether, all military. So I want the people here to realize, us grayheads, or people that aren't, they're gonna be in my position someday.
Thank you. Okay, I think we have no one else at the mic, so we're ready to vote. So we are now, if you go back to Article 4, Operating Budget. We are voting on Article 4. A yes is in favor of the budget and the override. A no is voting down the budget and saying no to the override. Everyone understands that, correct? All right, let's open the vote. That I've heard. No one repeated, thank you. And frankly, there are a lot of different perspectives, and I think that's good for everyone to hear. Does anyone need any more time? Please keep it down. Thank you. All right. Seeing no one saying that, let's close the vote. Hang on. You need more. Hang on. Hang on. Don't close it. Okay, does anyone need any more time? Has everyone voted who wants to vote? Thank you. Let's close the vote.
The article passes. And for anyone leaving,
If you could do so quietly, we got a lot of business to take care of here. And also remember, the only way the override passes. Article 5, Capital Stabilization Fund. Really appreciate it if people could keep it down as they leave. All right, this is to establish a capital stabilization fund sponsored by the advisory committee and recommended and approved by the select board and the advisory. This does require a 2/3 majority. The article has been moved and seconded. Is there anyone who has any comments or questions on the Capital Stabilization Fund? Yes, come on down. Thank you. Thank you.
Sarah Marks from Still River Road. Could someone explain what type of transparency there will be with respect to what programs would be funded by this fund? It wasn't clear to me if this was a fund that would then be used for projects that we would approve here, such as a town meeting, or how we would be aware of how these funds would be used. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. So just for those of you who couldn't hear, the question was about what sort of transparency would town meeting receive related to expenditures from this capital stabilization fund. So just to be clear, this vote is to authorize the creation of the fund, but any appropriations in the future from the capital stabilization fund would have to be authorized at a town meeting and appear on the warrant. So it'll all be in one of these.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on the Capital Stabilization Fund, establishing it? All right, let's open the vote. This is a 2/3 majority. 1 is yes, 2 is no, needs to pass by 2/3. For all those folks leaving, please be sure to drop off your clickers too. Thank you. Does anyone need any more time to vote on Article 5? 2/3 majority. Okay, seeing none, let's close the vote. That passes by a 2/3 majority. I can do that math. Article 6, spending limits of revolving fund accounts. This is to set a limit on the spending limits for these various different revolving accounts. Ken, did you have something you wanted to say or an amendment?
Ken Troop, 21 Meadow Road. I'd like to make a motion to amend this article to change the maximum amount expendable for the second line shown for the Neshoba Cadet EMT program from the $7,500 that's shown to $21,000.
Do you want to, all right, a motion has been made. Do we have a second? Second, okay. Do you want to explain why you want to do that?
Well, as you can see, it's the lowest number on the whole, of all of them that are there. It's quite a bit lower than the amount that's currently in the fund. And our feeling is that especially if the override doesn't pass, that this fund can be used to fund portions of the program to keep it going. And if you leave it at $7,500, then we have to go back to a town meeting to get more than that. Right now, there's $12,000 in the fund. So we'd at least like to do that. If you make it 21, then that's even more than the budget, which is good. And it affects nobody, really. It's just, it's almost an artificial number that's there.
Right.
And so that's why I'd like to raise it to 21.
Okay, thank you, Ken. So we have a motion before us to amend the article and to change the line item under the maximum amount expendable in the second line, Neshoba Cadet EMT, from $7,500 to $21,000. Are there any other comments or questions about that amendment? We're going to vote the amendment first, then we'll vote the article. Yes? Do you need a mic? There's a mic right there. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. That was a comment in favor of it, saying that it's well worth it. Any other comments about this? And again, we're voting on the amendment. Go ahead.
I'm unfamiliar with how this works. Does this change the budget in any way, or is this just an allocation of funds?
No, well, Ken can answer, but it doesn't change the budget.
Yeah, neither one, actually. It's a revolving fund. And these revolving funds carry over from year to year, and the state requires this vote to be done every year. The money that's in there came from prior years and in some sense came at a time when we were actually having adults take the course who were paying money to do it. That was not part of the budget, but was put into this fund that could then be spent on the program. So it has nothing to do with the budget itself right now.
Thank you.
It's simply what would be allowed to spend out of that fund.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no other questions, we are now going to vote on an amendment to change the amount from $7,500 to $21,000 for the Neshoba Cadet EMT program. So all those in favor, you're going to give a number 1 for yes. Opposed would be 2. So this is an additional count that we're doing for the amendment. Does anyone need any more time? Okay, let's close that. 245 to 23, the amendment passes. Did we move the article? Okay, now we're going to move the article and second it. So the article's been moved and seconded as in its new form with the amendment having been made. All right, so let's vote again. All those in favor of Article 6 with that change, vote 1 for yes. If you're opposed, vote 2. Anyone need any more time? All right, let's close that vote, please. That passes. Thank you. Article 7, replenish the stabilization fund to see if the town will Transfer from available funds, sum not to exceed $230,000 to be transferred to the stabilization fund, sponsored by the Select Board and approved by the Select Board and Advisory, and it's a majority vote. The article has been moved and seconded. Are there any discussion on the stabilization fund? This was part of the earlier presentation that it was important to try and put some money back into this. Seeing none, let's vote. All those in favor of Article 7? 1 for yes, opposed 2. Yes. Okay. Jenny, can we get another one? Down in front here. We have a device that doesn't seem like it's counting. Thank you. Thank you, Jenny. Anyone else? Any more time? Okay, let's close it. That passes. Article 8, Committee on Senior Tax Policy. To see if the town will vote to accept the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 60, Section 3D, establishing an aid to the elderly and disabled taxation fund as provided in that state legislation. Sponsored by the Select Board and approved by both Select Board and Advisory, and requires a majority vote.
Move the article. Second.
The article has been moved and seconded. Is there any comment or question on Article 8? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Choose 1. Opposed 2. Does anyone need any more time? All right, let's close the vote, please. That passes. Thank you. Article 9, amend bylaw in action upon failure to license dogs. To see if the town will vote to amend the code on issues relating to failure to license dogs. Sponsored by the Select Board, approved by both the Select Board and Advisory, and requires a majority vote.
Move the article. Second.
The article has been moved and seconded. I think we're changing the fines. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, let's vote. Okay, Article 9, all in favor, press 1, opposed 2. Does anyone need any more time? Seeing none, let's close the vote. That passes. Article 10, adoption of GLC 44, Section 54B, Prudent Investor Rule, to see if the town vote to accept the provisions of Mass General laws to allow trust funds to be invested in accordance to Mass General laws. Sponsored by the Treasurer, approved by the Select Board and Advisory, and it's a majority vote.
Move the article. Second.
The article has been moved and seconded. Okay, please.
Natalie McKnight, 38 Pinewood Road. In this, it says alternative investments, etc. Would that be ever construed to refer to cryptocurrency?
Absolutely not.
The question was, would that include cryptocurrencies? And the Treasurer said, absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Is it written in?
I would not allow our investors to do that. Absolutely not.
But you're one person, and we in a topsy-turvy world.
Yeah, but it's actually at my sole discretion. The treasurer, it's my fiduciary
Yes.
responsibility.
In the future.
When you're not in this position, what happens? Is it written that it can't be done, or you just say it won't be done?
Yeah, I can't speak for future treasurer. I can only speak for myself.
I would like to propose an amendment that would prohibit investment in cryptocurrency.
Second.
Okay, we have an amendment that's been proposed and seconded that would add to the adoption of this article the prohibition of ever using the funds through cryptocurrency investment. Is that the right wording? Is there a way to word that? There is a line in here that says the mass legal list of investments, which I assume is a list that the state keeps.
Yes, and they are all lists that the state keeps. It's just the prudent investor law. What that allows us to do is it gives us more flexibility to diversify our investments. Where the legal list right now, we have hardly any diversification.
Do you happen to know offhand if the list currently includes crypto?
It does not.
So this is bound by the mass legal list of investments, and you're,
We can put that in there. That's fine, we can do that.
okay? So we have an amendment proposed. We'll vote on the amendment first, and the amendment is to prohibit any of these investments being invested in cryptocurrency. Is that fair? Simple? Any other comments on that amendment? Yes.
Hi, Chris Marquis, 75 Bear Hill Road. I don't necessarily object to the concept of the amendment, but I'm worried that by having sort of vague language here, we might be locking ourselves into something down the line that we're not intending to, whether it be financial transactions that happen over a blockchain because that becomes an industry standard or whatever, and then we're in a situation where we're actually reducing the ability. So without actual firm language about what cryptocurrency is, this seems like something that shouldn't be done sort of on a one-off of making up language as we go. That's it. Thank you.
Good point. So one thing I would just say to follow on that comment is that everything that we pass has to be reviewed and approved, is that correct? By the Attorney General. So to your point, if we put this in there and they didn't like it, they could say you can't do that. No? So in talking with our counsel, I am wrong. Happens all the time. Ask my wife. So this isn't a bylaw change, so it's not something that's going to get reviewed by the AG. But we don't know if the wording that we're putting in is going to be acceptable in terms of, you know, what you're trying to accomplish.
Mr. Moderator, is it not your custom to require a written statement for something more than just a simple numeric change to an article? Should the amender requester submit to you in writing or the town clerk the proposed amendment and not take it as just a verbal of what is? Thank you.
Good point. I would say that my custom has been when it's a very simple amendment, like Ken's changed the number, I have not required people to put it in writing, but if it is something that is subject to, you know, different interpretations, it should be in writing. So I would ask whoever, the person who made the amendment, to give us something in writing that you want us to put on. Can you do that? You have it? Basically, you have to write what you want us to say.
Could I also just make one practical point, Mr. Moderator, on this? So I think it's a great point that this person raised. Obviously, we have Michelle Carlisle in the position of treasurer for the foreseeable future. What we can do, certainly as a select board, is to just say, we will certainly report back to you within the year about this issue, and there's nothing to prevent us from adding this sort of language at a future town meeting. Personally, I would hesitate to add language that we haven't really thought through and vetted before tonight, but we will report back to you on this issue because I understand it's an issue of public concern, and I'm sure we can talk about, just like if we want to include it in a future year, what the best wording would be.
I can ask Bartholomew to help with the language as well.
Yep.
This is the adoption of a statute as written, so if you want to put any limitations on it, we'd have to do that at a later time via maybe an internal policy, because here you're voting to adopt the statute as the statute is written. So you really can't either adopt it or not adopt it. So if you're going to have limitations later on, like Selectman just mentioned, you could always do that via an internal policy. But right now, the vote really is either it's a vote for the statute or not.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So, that being the case, we would ask if you'd be willing to hold off on your amendment and have them look into this, and if we need to, we can put it in next year, but we don't feel comfortable doing it as it's written. Jeremy?
Hey, Doug, nice
Yeah.
to meet you. Just want to clarify, I'm sure some of us are probably familiar with cryptocurrencies, but I think what would make you feel better, what was it? Oh, yeah, is federally regulated. And I think that's the big scare there, is that cryptocurrency still isn't within this regulation that, you know, let's face it, most countries around the world probably do. Their currencies are regulated. So maybe the wording can be around that. You know, it's that right now, cryptocurrency, let's face it, it's a shady thing still. There's no regulation really around it. And that's something that needs to be accounted for is I'm not advocating for cryptocurrency, I'm just saying it's the regulation. There is none really behind it.
Thank you. And again, the article itself is adopting a state rule.
My concern is that it's very easy for cryptocurrency to disappear, to be stolen. It's a huge cybercrime area, and that's why I'm concerned about the town investing anything in that. So I would hope that we can
understand that.
get that in there.
And just by the definition of prudent investor,
professional mind. Thank you.
Point taken.
Thank you. So I think your concern is duly noted, and have we now decided to walk away from trying to amend this? Yes? Thank you. Okay, so we're going to vote on it as is, whether or not to approve the prudent investor, adoption of the prudent investor rule.
Point of order?
Yes?
The motion was moved and seconded. We could vote it down, but I think we have to vote on it.
We don't have to if the person withdraws it. Have I spoken incorrectly, or do you agree to withdraw? Thank you, and I don't mean to make assumptions. We had another comment?
In adopting this rule, are there, and I'm guessing that the treasurer is the fiduciary to this, are there any additional interest costs to the town for managing this fund?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate everybody's thoughtfulness on this. So let's now vote. We're going to vote in favor or opposed to Article 10. 1 is in favor, 2 is opposed. Does anyone need any more time? All right, let's close the vote. Article 10 passes. Article 11, reauthorization of debt. To see if the town will appropriate $100,000 to pay additional costs of making drainage and flood control improvements for South Bolton and Spectacle Hill roads, including payment of all costs incidental and related thereto. Recommended by the finance team and approved by Select Board and Advisory, and requires a 2/3 majority. If you read the summary, it says this has no financial impact to the taxpayer. It's basically a reauthorization of something we did a year ago, 2 years ago? We think it was a couple of years ago, and this allows us to close it out. We have to reauthorize it. Is that?
Move the article. Second.
The article's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? All right, let's vote. All those in favor, yes. Opposed, no. Article 11. Does anyone need any more time? All right, let's close that vote. That passes. Article 12, amend non-criminal disposition. So this is amending our town code and basically changing the value of some of the fines that are in our code. Sponsored by the Select Board, approved by Select Board and Advisory, requires a majority vote. Article has been moved and seconded.
I guess I'll start with, I'm not a fan of the bags, with the trash bags. And I just have a question about what the purpose of the new, oh, sorry, Donna White, Berlin Road. What's the purpose of the change in the rules about the trash bags?
Sorry, which ones is she talking about specifically? Oh, got it. So first, let me say all of these changes were based on a review that we asked our town staff to do, where they compared our fees against other comparable communities. With respect to the trash bags at the transfer station, we were having issues with compliance, and I think in collaboration with our DPW head, the recommendation was that by increasing the fees for non-compliance, we could try to improve the compliance. And I know Mr. Heglin's here if he wants to add anything to it, but that's the general baseline.
What's the reason for not allowing another bag inside the trash bag? It says you can't have another bag inside the trash bag.
So
And these trash bags aren't very strong and they break, and so for some reason there's a new rule that says you can't have another bag inside of it. That's all I was asking about.
Randy, did you want to speak to that at all, or? Yep. And that was also related to concerns about compliance.
My feeling is if the color bag is on the outside, we're not going to be able to see this.
Okay, that's good. I mean, it says we're not allowed to do that. Okay.
We're not going to be opening bags.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so the question was about the trash bags at the transfer station and whether or not you could put a different bag inside of the orange bag. And the DPW director said, yes, you could. That it's really just, you can't take a black, trash bag and throw it in there it doesn't comply. It needs to be in one of the orange bags.
The same confusion as before, though.
Should we?
It's written as they can fine it. So when he's no longer performing this position, are we at risk of $250 fines later on? It seems like that verbiage needs to be removed.
Right.
You can't just pass it on someone's word.
Can we change the wording? Is that an option?
I don't read it that way. I don't. It says if you don't use the orange bag, you're going to get a fine. But if you use the orange bag, you're okay.
It says greater than 33 gallons inserted inside of green orange open trash bag. So if you have a bigger bag inside the open bag, you can get a fine.
I think the concern that was motivating this is that if somebody used inside a much stronger bag than the ones that we had outside, that was clearly bigger than what the approved bag would hold, that they're sort of putting it in the trash knowing that the outer bag is going to fall apart, and you're basically allowed to put more trash than you would otherwise. I think most people may just want to double bag for safety reasons, and what our DPW director said is they're not going to be opening up people's bags to see if you have another one inside. Just use a bag that fits the colored bag that you're going to use.
Graham Sleeker, 39 Whitcomb, complicated issue. I put it in a barrel. I have the orange bag in a barrel so it can't fall apart, and then when I dump it, I pull the top up. It's fine. You don't need another bag. It's not going to break. Same thing, same amount of trash.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't think we need to do that. So, not seeing any amendments proposed, I think we're ready to vote. Okay, so we're voting on Article 12. In favor of all the new wording that's in the warrant would be a 1, opposed would be a 2. Does anyone need any more time? All right, let's close that vote. That passes. Article 13, amend the sign bylaw. So this is an overhaul of the sign bylaw and rewriting of the regulations. Sponsored by the Planning Board, approved by the Select Board and Advisory, and the Planning Board, and requires a 2/3 majority. And do we have a Planning Board report?
Mike Gore, Chair of the Bolton Planning Board. So I'm going to take you through the next 7 articles, and I promise we'll try to get through them quickly. I've got some text that I need to read before each article, so please bear with me. So for the sign bylaw, at a duly noticed Planning Board meeting conducted on March 12, 2025, the Planning Board unanimously voted 5-0 to support and recommend approval of Article 13 to amend the zoning bylaw by deleting existing Section 250-18 sign regulations in its entirety and inserting a new Section 250-18 sign regulations. So the basic premise of this bylaw is to give a little bit more clarity to the sign definition in our existing bylaws, which were a little bit confusing. The main thing it does, though, is currently if people in town want to put up a sign, they need to come to the select board to get that approved. Right now, this article will allow the building inspector to grant a sign permit as long as the sign meets the definition and all of the new bylaw. We've also clarified the sign, the area calculation. We've put a few limits, including 1 sign for each commercial use and 1 freestanding sign. Some important things that I know people have concerns about: this is not affecting political signs. So, you know, the planning board and the police are not coming for anyone's political signs. If a sign is not allowed by this bylaw, the new bylaw that we're proposing, it was not allowed by the existing bylaw. So I'll pause for any questions here.
Okay, any comments or questions? Yes.
Rob Colclaser, 62 Century Mill. Does this apply to postings? Like if I have no hunting posting signs around my perimeter of my yard, does this also apply to those, or is that not? Okay, it wasn't clear to me that wasn't. Okay.
Okay. Let's vote on. Okay. Sure.
Rick Merrill, Sugar Road. I was reading the bylaw about the signs, and in under temporary signs, number 3, and under sandwich boards, and these sandwich boards I think are about 8 feet square.
it says, number 2, it says the sign can in no way impede sight distance. And I thought, what is a sight distance? I thought sight was about a map and so forth. And then I said it out loud, and it became sight distance. And I researched it a little bit, and that word is supposed to be S-I-G-H-T, to my surprise. So as a convicted bad speller, I would like to move to change the word S-I-T-E to S-I-G-H-T. Thank you.
Do you agree with that?
And I have a second.
I am not a grammar expert, so I don't know if I agree with that or not.
What I was going to say is, if it is a change that is what was intended, we don't even have to vote on it.
Exactly. Like, that is the intent. The intention
Okay.
is impeding.
We're going to change that, S-I-G-H-T. And we don't need to vote on it because we're not changing the intent of the bylaw. It just was a typo.
Typo.
Okay? S-I-G-H-T. All right? Anything else? Okay, let's vote on the amend sign bylaw, Article 13. All in favor, 1. Opposed, 2. Anyone need any more time? Okay. Everyone all right? Okay, let's close the vote, please. That passes. By a 2/3 majority. All right, Article 14 is accessory dwelling unit amendment, sponsored by the Planning Board, approved by the Select Board Advisory and Planning Board, requires a majority vote. The article has been moved in second, and the Planning Board has a report.
At a duly noticed Planning Board meeting conducted on March 12, 2025, the Planning Board unanimously voted 5-0 to support and recommend approval of Article 14 to amend Sections 250-12, 21D, and 28 of the zoning bylaw related to accessory dwelling units to comply with new Massachusetts general laws. So as some of you may remember, in 2021, the town voted to allow detached accessory dwelling units by special permit. Attached ADUs were already allowed in our bylaws. In 2024, Massachusetts allowed accessory dwelling units by right. So this amendment is to bring our existing bylaw into compliance with the Massachusetts law. There's no change to the maximum size of accessory dwelling units, either attached or detached, from the existing bylaw. And the other major change is this moves the planning board review process from a special permit, which gives us authority over it, to a site plan review, which just allows us to review it. And that's, again, just to comply with the new Massachusetts law.
Any comments or questions? All right, then let's vote. All those in favor of the accessory dwelling unit amendment? 1 is a yes. 2 is a no. Does anyone need any more time? All right, let's close the vote. That passes. Thank you. Amendment, Article 15, amendments to Chapter 250 zoning, Bolton zoning scenic bylaw update, sponsored by the Planning Board, approved by the Select Board, Advisory, and Planning Board. This requires a 2/3 majority. The article has been moved and seconded in the Planning Board.
At a duly noticed Planning Board meeting conducted on March 12, 2025, the Planning Board voted unanimously 5-0 to support and recommend approval of Article 15 to amend the zoning bylaw, Section 250-24, related to scenic roads to correct the Massachusetts general law reference and correct street names. This is strictly an amendment to change the names of the scenic roads that we have in our bylaws to the correct names that actually exist in town. So from these you can see that Moore Road, there is no Moore Road. That is Annie Moore Road. Spectacle is Spectacle Hill Road. Town Farm is Farm Road. And Willow, there is no Willow in town. That is actually a small portion of Delaney Street. So we are not adding or removing any roads from the scenic road bylaw. We are simply correcting the existing names.
Any comments? Questions?
Martha Remington, 447 Main Street. I have an issue with the Town Farm name. That road was called Town Farm because there used to be a town farm on that road for people who didn't have other jobs, and they worked and were able to have a roof over their heads. And I think that having it Farm Road is incorrect and not allowing the true reason it was called Town Farm, because there was one there. So anyway, I don't think it should be changed because it had nothing to do with Farm Road. Make it some other name. Should be Town Farm.
Thank you.
I understand the concern, but there is no Town Farm Road in town on a map. So for this to be in the bylaw and have this apply to, I mean, this applies when someone needs to have a scenic tree or road hearing.
I mean, there's no sign that designates Town Farm? All these years it's been incorrect?
It's been incorrect.
Well, let's not perpetrate more incorrectness.
Thank you. On the town map, it's called Farm Road. Okay. Any other comments? All right, let's vote. All those in favor of Article 15? 1 is yes, 2 is no. Does anyone need any more time? All right, let's close the vote on Article 15. This is a 2/3 majority. And it passes. Thank you. Article 16, 250-22 floodplain district bylaw update. This is sponsored by the Planning Board, approved by Select Board and Advisory, and Planning, requires a 2/3 majority. The article's been moved and seconded, and we have a Planning Board report.
At a duly noticed Planning Board meeting conducted on March 12, 2025, the Planning Board unanimously voted 5-0 to support and recommend approval of Article 16 to amend the zoning bylaw, Section 250-22, floodplain overlay district. So periodically, FEMA releases new floodplain maps, and when they do that, the town adopts them into our bylaws. There was a little bit of language change in them regarding 100-year floodplain versus 1% events, but this is standard for what we do every few years when we have new FEMA maps.
Any questions or comments on Article 16? Seeing none, let's vote. All those in favor? Vote 1 for yes, opposed 2 for no. Does anyone need any more time? All right, let's close the vote. That passes. Article 17, site plan review process change. This is also recommended, sponsored by the Planning Board, approved by Select Board and Advisory. 2/3 majority vote. The article has been moved and seconded, and we have a Planning Board report.
At a duly noticed Planning Board meeting conducted on March 12, 2025, the Planning Board unanimously voted 5-0 to support and recommend approval of Article 17 to amend the zoning bylaw section 250-23.f and 250.23.g related to site plan review. So similar to the sign bylaw article, this is the Planning Board taking more power from the Select Board, or easing their schedule a bit. So there is a, in our existing site plan review process, it's our existing bylaws have the Select Board review that, who generally refers it back to the Planning Board to actually do the site plan review. Because that falls within our purview, it just makes more sense to have an applicant come directly to the Planning Board first, rather than having to go to a meeting of the Select Board, have them refer it, and then the applicant get onto our schedule. So it's a method similar to the sign bylaw of streamlining the application process for things in town.
Any questions or comments on Article 17? All right, let's vote. 1 is in favor, 2 is opposed. Does anyone need any more time? All right, let's close the vote on Article 17. That passes. Article 18, farmland, open space, and planned residential design update. So this is an update to our Fosford bylaw, sponsored by the Planning Board, approved by the Select Board and Advisory, and Planning Board requires a majority vote. Article has been moved and seconded, and we have a report from the Planning Board.
At a duly noticed Planning Board meeting conducted on March 12, 2025, the Planning Board unanimously voted 5-0 to support and recommend approval of Article 18 to amend the zoning bylaw section 250-14 of the Farmland and Open Space Planned Residential Development Bylaw. So for those not familiar, the FOSPRID is the bylaw under which most subdivisions in town get built. Part of that existing provision in our bylaw is that we require them to have, sorry, there's a typo here, it says 30%. It's really 33% of any any parcel of property needs to be reserved for open space when they build a subdivision under FOSBRD. This bylaw is going to amend that to increase it to 50%, which is in line with some of our other neighboring towns. It achieves Bolton's goal of providing for more open space and more protected land. The other thing that we're changing in the process is the planning board was able to get a grant to work with a really interesting planner who taught us a lot about doing kind of rural development in town. Big thank you to Bob Romer, who made that possible. And part of his process was this 4-step design process. And we like this so much that we're incorporating this into our bylaw. What it really allows is for the planning board to get involved much earlier in the process, including things like what are the best places to preserve within a lot, so houses or other structures aren't put there. It allows us to help them locate house sites, street alignments, make sure it lines up with the existing trail networks. And it's really just kind of getting the planning board to help out more and take a comprehensive look at an entire parcel. So again, the two main things that we're changing with the existing FOSBRD is to increase the amount of open space from 33 to 50%, and then adopting this 4-step review process.
Any comments or questions on the changes to the, yes?
FOSBRD, the existing FOSBRD allows developers to have a 1-acre lot. So when you use FOSBRD, existing today, that's a 1-acre lot. And in exchange for that, we're getting today 33% open space. Now we move to 50% open space.
This has been a bylaw for about 20 years, and it's been, as you said, used in almost every development you've seen in town. And we've preserved a lot of open space, and it's worked well. Any questions or comments? Yes.
Hi there. My name is Tom DeRocher. I'm at 55 Hudson Road. And I agree with all this. But the question is that we talk about passing the budget, and now we have to develop new revenue streams. Are we adding more open spaces and less opportunity for commercial property with this amendment? I was just kind of curious. Because we talked about making more revenues for the town.
I mean, yeah, it's a good point. This only applies to residential, residential lots.
But is more of the town becoming more open spaces? With this, because now we're going to 50%.
If a developer has, let's say, a 10-acre parcel, right, like under the existing bylaw today, they're required to preserve 33% of that as open space.
It'll be less land.
It'll be 50% now.
All right.
Any other comments or questions?
Sorry, Chris Marquis, 75 Bear Hill. I was just wondering what the theory behind the 50% was, and whether that sort of kills the incentive for a developer to use this. If there's a 2-acre lot requirement, they're getting 1, but they have to give 50% over to open space. That's the same 2-acre requirement. So what's the incentive now for a developer to use this and give any open space to the town?
Building on smaller lot sizes is generally cheaper, right? You have reduced pavement for roads. So again, as the moderator mentioned, almost every subdivision I believe every subdivision since I've been a member of the planning board that's gone into town has utilized the FOSBRD. They do prefer building in smaller clusters like that FOSBRD gives them, as opposed to a traditional subdivision.
Okay, are we ready to vote? 1 is in favor of Article 18, 2 is opposed to update the farmland open space bylaw. Does anyone need any more time? Okay, let's close the vote. That passes. Thank you. Article 19, Section 250-23-4 Cottage Overlay District. This is sponsored by the Planning Board and recommended by Select Board, Planning Board, and Advisory, and requires a majority vote. What is your pleasure? Article has been moved and seconded, and we have a Planning Board report.
At a duly noticed Planning Board meeting conducted on March 12, 2025, the Planning Board unanimously voted 5-0 to support and recommend approval of Article 19 to adopt Section 250.23.4 of the zoning bylaw by creating a cottage overlay district. So this article was driven primarily by the work that was done on the master plan. And as you may or may not know, the master plan has been going on for the past few years, involving many different people and groups in town to basically poll the town to see what are they interested in, what sort of services, what sort of things. Something that came up over and over again is, people want options, different options from the single family zoning that we have in town, especially to be able to age in place and to have more affordable housing options. So the cottage overlay district is really a way of, and maybe we'll just go to the next slide first. Did we skip the first slide? Maybe, is there one before that? Sorry, oh, no, sorry, okay, might be a little out of order. That's fine. The whole purpose of the cottage overlay district is to create smaller clustered housing. So, sorry. So what we're doing with this is restricting the number of bedrooms to 3 bedrooms and the size of each house to, here we go, 1,850 square feet. So the real purpose of this bylaw is to build smaller housing. And again, to give an option to people who say, I want to age in place in town. Right now, the only thing that gets built, and again, the phosphid, that last thing we talked about, when people build new subdivisions in town, they build 3,000 and 4,000 square foot houses. That's it. That's what developers are incentivized to build in this town. Those are $1 million plus houses. And so, we heard a lot of discussion earlier on with the budget about people saying, hey, I can't afford to live here anymore, but they still have a sense of community in Bolton. They want to have the ability to stay in town, to age in place, but they don't need the giant house anymore. The cottage overlay district is really our proposal to answer that question for them. You've probably noticed this kind of around different communities in and around Bolton. Here in Bolton, we have Brigham Farm Lane, which is right off Sugar Road. That was, while that's not the exact same as our cottage development, that is a cottage style development that was done through the 40B process, so we had no control over that. But that's on Sugar Road. Those are, you get a look at those houses. It's small clustered housing, community feel. Cortland Lane in Harvard, which is over by the Ayer Rotary, for people who have seen that, very similar to what we're proposing. Riverwalk in Concord is a famous one. And in Lancaster, there's Cottage Lane, which is right off of Deershorn. So another one, like cottage developments that give people kind of sense of community, small houses, ability to age in place, and also the ability for younger homeowners to come into town beforehand. The idea behind restricting it to 3 bedrooms has to do with kind of the number of kids that come into town with that. So a typical 4-bedroom house is going to have 0.84 kids per house. A 3-bedroom house is 0.44. A 2-bedroom house, 0.12. And a 1-bedroom house is negligible. So the cottage overlay district gives developers the ability to have 1 to 3 bedroom units. Much like phosphid, this has a 50% open space preservation as part of it. All stormwater management is required to be discharged on site. So there's no water leaving the property. And this is handled by special permit by the planning board. So I've talked a lot there. I'm sure people have questions, so let me pause.
Nan Schnitzler, Meadow Road. Did you mean the development on Sugar Road across from the candy store?
Correct.
That's not Brigham Farm. There's a different name.
I thought that's Brigham Farm Lane.
It's Craftsman Village, but the two streets are Village Lane, Brigham Farm Lane.
Yeah.
Okay, because I thought the one at the where Golden Run goes off, I thought that was Brigham Farm.
It's Brigham Farm Lane. I don't know what the name of.
That's Houghton Farm.
Houghton. Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, Sam Bosley, Laurel Road. Would the stormwater management be operated by the homeowners, or would that be operated by the town?
Homeowners Association.
Got it.
So one of the one of the sad facts about Bolton, I mean, it's good and it's bad. We have no public water, no public sewer. This kind of cottage development, like realistically, these are hard to build. They've been built in town, they've been built in other towns, but it really takes a developer who knows what they're doing to do this kind of development successfully. Okay, and that means there's lots of ways you have to fit shared septic or shared water on the property. And what that naturally leads to is an HOA that manages all that stuff. So, again, reduced costs for town in the sense that typically the HOA is going to own those roads. But yeah, it's all private water and sewer managed by the HOA.
And who would conduct the enforcement on that?
Board of Health.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Mr. Moderator. Graham Sleeker, 39 Whitcomb Road. The question about this, it may be in the documentation, but I haven't read it. We hear about HOAs. There's obviously some shared resources here that might call for some kind of collaboration there. But HOAs are actually a defect in title, and they are frequently abused. You hear these horror stories where they're more prevalent, like in the South. So my question is there any impetus, is there any direction in this permitting process to restrict the defect in title that the HOA would have on the property owner? In other words, the ability to foreclose and the ability for ridiculous fines and all that sort of thing, those types of horror shows. And so I understand the need where you may want to have the common ownership of the shared resources, but I was buying properties years ago, and my attorney told me she would not represent me in the purchase of anything with an HOA because it was a defect in title. And so, I'm kind of thinking ahead there, because sometimes people just say, oh, HOA, and there's no recognition for how abusive that can be. And so it would be perhaps possible to put it into the permitting process to limit the defect in title, the ability to damage the homeowner with that defect in title. Is that something you're looking at?
To be truthful, no. No, I mean, the HOA is something that would have to be managed by the builder, right? And we don't want the town to be part of the HOA. That's
No, it's not what I'm suggesting. The HOA is a defect in title. They have the ability to seize the property if certain fines aren't paid, and they operate in a way too much control over the property. But if the permitting process limits the ability of the covenant to actually access the real property, then you limit the ability to do the damage. And perhaps Mr. Gibbons might want to comment on that. So then that defect in title would exist.
Well, you say a defect, they have those rights. I know what you're saying. They don't pay your fees, they then foreclose.
Exactly.
A lot of that is governed by statute.
So there is a Massachusetts statute that governs what an HOA can do with respect to the covenants.
Like condominium associations, it's no different, right?
Yeah.
That's all statute.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
all
you.
right, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes?
Do you want to come to the microphone?
No, thanks. I'm good.
No.
I have questions relative to location. Location. The cottage overlay district shall apply to parcels that shall be
a floating overlay district applicable to tracts of land with an area of 10 acres or greater in the residential district. What is a floating overlay district?
I assume that's legal speak for, I mean, anywhere in the residential zone in
Anywhere.
town. Yes, anywhere, 10 plus acres.
Okay, that brings me to my next question then, which is, there's no limitation that I read in this for the number of special permits allowed overall
Correct.
or on a time period basis?
Correct.
Okay, if we look at the 2035 map of potential 10-acre plus parcels, that is a lot of parcels to which this could apply.
So my
I mean a lot.
and my answer, well, there's really about 30 in town that could be, but again, that's 30 that are over 10 acres. Okay, many of those will have limitations due to wetlands or just other problems on the property. Now, again, all of those places are subject to the existing phosphid bylaw. If someone wants to build on those parcels, they can do that today. All this is doing is giving them a different way of building things.
Well, it's a lot more units on the 10,000 square foot per bedroom basis if you do the math than a 1 acre lot.
Well, I'll say that, like, so what's your concern about the number of?
Well, you look at that map and you look at the number of 10-acre plus parcels all over Bolton. This is not restricted anywhere.
They can build now. I mean, that's the point. And again, I'm going to go back to like doing this kind of development is difficult to do, right? To make the shared septic and the shared water work is.
But there's no limit on the number of communities in Bolton?
There's no limit on the number of phosphid developments in Bolton. So if someone wants how is this different? This is just allowing, right now our bylaws only allow for single family housing. Okay? So everyone talks about the affordability crisis in housing, right? The cottage overlay is designed to address affordability in Bolton.
So isn't this basically a condo community?
I wouldn't call it a condo community per se. It's a cottage overlay. I mean, we have a lot more control via special permit over the design, the layout, the look and feel of these things.
I think your point is well taken. What it is a different type of housing. And these are residential lots that can be built on. So you can have big houses that cost $5 million each, or you can have a couple of smaller units that give a different housing choice.
But by not putting any limit on the number allowed to be built in Bolton, or the total number on any given parcel, that could be a lot of units and a lot of people.
Thank you.
Do you hear what I'm saying?
Can I respond to that?
I might help you.
Okay, go ahead.
Or not. Christopher Austin, I'm at 28 Bont Hill Road, next door neighbors to Mr. Nichols. And what this means for me, I have about 37 acres. And because of the way it's laid out, I could do a phosphid plan and build about 6 houses. And I'll speak against my own interest in here, but I think to say what her concern is, if you do the math, I could do 160 bedrooms, which is approximately, between 70 and 80 homes in that same space. I think we could actually fit it. I saw this, I said, that would be interesting. I think it's hard to do economically. Von Hill Road, as a nice rural road, it's a lot different having 60 dwellings with 60 cars versus 6. Now, I'm going to vote in favor of this because I want to preserve my optionality for later. We're not going to do anything with the land right now, but if we eventually wanted to, I want to be able to do that. But I think it's a well-taken point. At some level, if not for that self-interest, I would like to have these kinds of developments nearer to more major thoroughfares, near 495, on 117, other places where it doesn't impact small, narrow streets, because when you look at the traffic going on our street now, if we added 50 or 60 additional cars, it would make a material difference in how people interact. So I believe that might be part of what you're talking about.
Thank you.
Yep, and again, the point of the cottage overlay, I mean, if you can look at similar developments that have been built in surrounding towns, they generally are smaller developments. I mean, that, like, part of what you're selling is the community feel of a cottage development. So while, yes, you know, we're not putting a strict limit on it, again, the septic and water resources, we'll just limit it by nature. I mean, people just can't build large developments in some of those areas, especially with the 50% restriction that we have. I mean, I think it's something we could amend at a later date if we, I don't, you know, do I envision people lining up, you know, trying to permit a bunch of these? No, because they could just build a similar Phosphid subdivision today. So I don't think there's a huge appetite for those right now. So we can.
I just wanted to speak on the limiting the number of units over time, or that's capped at the bylaw, and I can refer to Bob Gibbons to confirm this, but in Massachusetts, you're not allowed to phase growth in that manner. You would have to have a plan in place, and those numbers would have to be temporary, and we just went through that process in the master plan, which was one of the outcomes of that planning process was this bylaw, and we carefully went through the parcels and the available land, and we created some limitations in terms of resource areas. So the amount of open space that has to be preserved is we're only allowing up to 50% of that open space to consist of restricted wetland resource areas and common septic services. So there is natural limitations that consider environmental factors. In addition to that, we incorporated the 4-phase design process into the planning aspect, and the special permit does allow the planning board to have discretionary approval.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments? Yes.
But some of the areas in town are now losing their water. And I'm just wondering if you had a cottage district, I'm not against it, but what about the water? We only have so much. And that's why initially we signed 2 acres per house so that we would have our own septic and our own wells, and it would last. And I've many a time I've said to the selectmen, what is our top line on the amount of water that the town can supply?
Thank you.
I'm gonna have Bob Romer speak to that, member of the planning board.
Yeah, Bob Romer, 185 Main Street. Yeah, that is a concern, but if you look at the requirements we have both with the Board of Health and with the layout, that is something that needs to be carefully considered. As far as what appears to be general rumor that people are running out of water in Bolton, we have no legitimate documented case of that. People are running out of water because their wells, particularly with deep wells, unfortunately are being clogged by a combination of sediment and a number of other things. And a number of those wells have either had to be fracked, we do frack wells, to open up those crevices, or in a number of cases, people are drilling much deeper wells. And the outcome of that typically is, oh, we're running out of water. No, we're not running out of water. Those wells basically form reservoirs. Rather than putting a tank at the top, you drill a very deep well, and that provides a substantial reservoir, so during peak usage, you have the water that you need. But again, certainly there will be consideration for the hydrological aspects of this as we go into this type of development. Incidentally, there is an enormous amount of state information on every well that's drilled in Bolton. And if you want to take a look at that, you will discover what I've just said.
Jeremy?
Thanks. Just one other point on this. You know, so we're proposing smaller homes. Okay, smaller homes, fewer bedrooms, use less water. Smaller landscaped areas, smaller yards, right? 50% open space on this. But we also have the ability to have, you know, the planning board can incorporate, you know, drought-resistant plantings and drip irrigation. The planning board can designate a lot of things to help reduce the water usage in the smaller community. Okay.
Hello, I'm Eric Nealon. I'm also a member of the planning board. I just wanted to give a quick example of numbers because I heard some numbers running around. So a 10-acre lot could be two acre, you know, zoning, so you can get like 5 standard houses. Then we have Phosphid, which allows you to keep 50% open space, and those 5 houses get moved to 5 acres, so you have about 1 acre each lot. So same thing with this bylaw. So you same 10-acre property, 50% goes to open space. You're left with 5 acres. So that's roughly 5 times 40,000. So it's 200,000 divided by 10. So that's 20 bedrooms. So if you have 5 standard houses, 4-bedroom houses, you'll have like 5 4-bedroom, large McMansion type houses. This will allow you to build 10 2-bedroom houses. People were saying 6 houses to 60 units. That's not how the math works out. I think we worked out like the max on that 10-acre lot, maybe Pam, you can correct me, is going from a standard 10-acre lot, I think the max you could get was 22 units. 22 2-bedroom units. I used 40,000. The number's a little bit differently. It's just rounding. So the fear factor of, oh, all of a sudden you're going to have this huge development where there's only be 5 houses. We're talking about roughly the same number of bedrooms, just able to divide it into smaller units, more affordable houses. So people, younger people or older people will have an option versus a standard $1 million house.
Thank you. Yes.
Real quick. Austin Clark, Hudson Road. This is really important. We have a immense lack of starter homes in our community, affordable homes for young families. When you think about the average house in Massachusetts, I moved here in 2013, and had I not moved in 2013, I wouldn't afford to live here right now. I love this town, and I don't want hardworking young families to be denied the opportunity to live here and use our schools and our library. And I think we'd be doing a gross disservice to our community if we didn't allow for this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Yes. Kate.
I'm just looking at this from the perspective of, I hear a lot of people complaining about property taxes, about a lot of other issues. The cottage overlay is a tool that allows us to address a lot of the concerns that people here have brought up tonight. It addresses some issues with regard to real estate taxes for seniors, because it's going to be a smaller, cheaper, more affordable property. It just gives us some diversity and some tools, which I think a lot of people in this room have asked for one way or another. So I think it would be a really good development for the town to have this, this option.
Thank you. Are we ready to vote? All right, thank you. All right, so we will vote on the cottage overlay bylaw. 1 is in favor, 2 is opposed. This is a simple majority. Let's open that vote. Anyone need any more time? All right, let's close the vote. That passes. Article 20, Special Act, Alcoholic Beverages License, sponsored by the Select Board, approved by the Select Board and Advisory, and it's a majority vote.
Move the article.
The article's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none, we will vote. All in favor of Article 20? 1 is yes, 2 is opposed. Does anyone need any more time? All right, let's close the vote. That passes. Thank you. Article 21, amend bylaw notice of town meetings, sponsored by the Select Board, approved by Select Board and Advisory. It's a majority vote. The article's been moved and seconded. Any discussion or, yes?
Rob Ayers, Main Street. When I read this article, I was kind of curious. Maybe I misread it. It says the warrant's supposed to be posted to Town Hall. I don't go there real regular. I don't hang around there. The post office, I go once a month maybe, and 2 other places, but I don't know where they are. I count on getting this warrant in the mail. And if you send it electronically, and by the way, I'm not a Luddite. I've been using email since the 1970s, okay? But there's things called spam filters, and it doesn't always get through. And I recognize you're trying to save some money and make things flow a little smoother, but you're going to disappear visibility to the town meetings if you eliminate mailing the warrant. And I thought when I read this, it said it had to be delivered 7 days in advance. But now that I look at it, it has to be posted 7 days in advance. You only delivered it 4 days in advance of tonight, which I think is kind of short. If you want to revise anything, make it get delivered 7 days in advance, because when you put these 10-page articles in there, it takes a while to decode them, especially ones that refer to maps that aren't included. So I would say I'm going to vote no for Article 21, and I wish you would get the warrant out a little bit earlier in paper form.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Question is, how much money would we save?
Marie Salbavero. Currently, the Stowe and Bolton Independent are presenting the warrant for free for us. They carry it for free. We pay for printing and distribution, but you know from last week's issue that they're also looking at selling the paper. They've yet to find a buyer, and we've been relying upon their mailing. So. approximately probably about $2,500. Line by line.
Any other? Yep, one over here.
Sarah Marks, Still River Road. I just, I'm a little concerned that, that seniors will have a difficult time getting this because, if we're not sending it to them, and I agree, I'm all about not wasting paper and cutting down on costs and like, but it says if a resident did not have access to the internet, a complimentary hard copy would be provided upon request. But if they don't know to request it, which many won't, then how are we gonna keep them informed? I'm sure there is a process. If somebody can think about how we can do that, that would be great. But I just wanted to call that out. Thank you.
Thank you. Jenny?
Jenny Jacobson, 595 Sugar Road. I just want to explain that the intention of this is really to give the town some more flexibility so we don't wind up in a jam where we don't have a way to distribute it. The town hall staff is very accommodating, and a phone call to town hall would get you a copy, an email to town hall would get you a copy. I'm certain if the newspaper did shut down and we didn't have that available, we would come up, we're pretty creative. We would come up with a form that can be used. We might use the census to get the information out. So we will communicate the best that we can. We will get copies to anybody that wants one. And I also just want to say that because we have the website, we are getting the warrant out to people quicker than we ever have before. This year it was posted the day that it closed. So I would ask everybody to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's vote on Article 21. Yes is in favor of making these changes to give the town more flexibility. No is opposed. Does anyone need any more time? All right, let's close that vote. That passes. Majority. Article 22, wastewater treatment facility upgrades. Sponsor, Department of Public Works, approved by the Select Board and Advisory, and a majority vote. The article has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion or comment? Seeing none, let's vote. All those in favor? 1 is a yes, 2 is a no. Yes, Martha. Well, this doesn't tell you what your vote is. All this tells you is it's recorded your vote. It could be yes, it could be no. But if it goes blue, it's been recorded as a vote. And we only know what the vote is when we close it and we see the number yes and no. Sorry. I'm sorry. Any other questions? If you see a number in the gray screen, should be a number 1 there and says okay, that means you voted. And you can change it until I close it. Ready? Let's close it. Thank you. You're welcome. Okay, that passes. Article 23, Florence Sawyer School Replacement Boiler, sponsored by the Select Board and approved by the Select Board and advisory in a majority vote. The article's been moved and seconded. And this is final payment for something we did a while ago, I guess. Any questions or comments? Let's vote. All those in favor of Article 23, 1 is a yes, 2 is opposed. Does anyone need any more time? All right, let's close it, please. That passes. At the very top, you can see 137 to 4. Yes. Okay, Article 24, Roads and Easement Acceptance, Tadmore Development, sponsor, Planning Board.
I just wanted to add, at our last select board meeting, which was this past Thursday, the select board also considered this and voted 2 in favor to recommend this. We were waiting on the completion of a punch list.
Okay, and that requires a majority vote. And do we have a planning board? Oh, we're going to move it. It's been moved and seconded. Thank you. And now a planning board report.
At a duly noticed planning board meeting conducted on April 30th, 2025, the planning board unanimously voted 4-0 to support and recommend approval of Article 24 to accept Goose Pond Path as a public way as laid on the street acceptance plan with a date of September 28th, 2023, and with a revision date of April 17th, 2025. For those of you not aware, Goose Pond Path is off Main Street on the corner of Four Bush Mill Road.
Any questions or comments? All right, let's vote. In favor of Article 21 would be a 1, opposed would be a 2. 24, excuse me. Does anyone need any more time? All right, let's close the vote, please. That passes 131 to 16. All right, we have 2 more votes. One is to authorize the town election, and the final one is to dissolve the meeting. I just want to remind everyone that you do need to go out and vote for any of this, for the override to happen. It's got to be passed in the vote next week as well. I want to thank everyone for your help tonight. A lot of volunteers, a lot of town employees put a lot of work into this and spent a lot of time getting to this point. Thank you. All right, so the first one is to authorize the town election. Moved and seconded. We're going to do a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay? Thank you. One more. Motion to dissolve the meeting
Motion to dissolve the meeting.
Second.
has been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Goodbye.